what's legit.
Right. Hi, I'm Don Plessas, and I know a lot of you here, and what I wanted to talk to you about is a long time ago I started off, I'll just go back to the beginning of the story. My mother wanted to tell me about Meaderville, where she grew up, and I gave her a tape recorder, and she had a lot of trouble with that tape recorder. And I called more names than I could remember. But so instead I handed her a notebook, and so she started writing notes. And she filled up a couple notebooks about her friends. And so what I decided to do after my mother passed away was, I was reading it, and I thought, well, I'll type it out for my kids. So I started typing it out, and it would say that somebody lived here, and next to them, and it tells a little story about them, and next to them lived this person, and across the street lived this person, and across the street lived this person, next to them lived this person. And I didn't know if I was on Lincoln Avenue or Leatherwood or where I was. So I decided I better go get a map. So I went down to Guido's bar, which is in what's it called? I'm trying to think of the name.
Casa Grande's?
Casa Grande's. Casa Grande's. And if you go into Casa Grande's, go around the corner, they have a lot of Meaderville memorabilia. And they have in Guido's bar, there's a great big map in there, and it has the names of the people that were in Meaderville. The only problem was, a lot of the things in her story, there wasn't on that map. So I thought, well, she told me about the band room and about all these other things, and where were they? So I came up the archives, and one day I come stumbling in, and Jim McCarthy was stumbling, oh, I know where to find some of this, and he found this thing called the Sanborn Maps. And this has every part of Butte up to, on this particular one, 1916. And they're great. So I went and started looking at the Meaderville Sanborn Maps, and it had the band room listed, it had all the saloons, it had everything. And you can get a Sanborn map, I'll just diverge for a little. If you wanted to, examples, Elkhorn, out by Boulder, all we see is just a few buildings. You can get the Sanborn map, and it shows what Elkhorn originally looked like with all the buildings, and they have the saloons and the female boarding. That's another name for it. They had them all listed that way, okay? And they do have it on the Sanborn maps. The earlier ones here in Butte on Park Street they had was the female boarding originally before it moved on to Mercury Street. Anyway, back to Meaderville, I found the map, Sanborn, and I thought, oh, this is great. I can start looking and figure out what's going on. So what I did with the Sanborn map is I got on there in the back there, they got very sturdy tables. Okay? I put it on the table, I stood on the table above it with my camera, and I took a picture of each of the ones. So that allowed me, and this is just a large view of it, it allowed me to have the Sanborn map and allowed me to put the names of everybody on the map. And I ended up breaking it into 6 different sections to make it fit. Now this is just a big part of it. I have the book, and there's only a few copies left, a couple here and a couple down at Books and Books. And it's called Katie's Story. And I'm just kind of going through how I created that. And I'll show you the tools that I used. And how many people, is there anybody here from Fintown? Okay, I was hoping. Oh, Centerville. Are we all Meaderville? Okay, all right. Anyway, if you have some friends, what I'd like to do, what I'm hoping to do with this here is show you how I did this and encourage other people to take on and recreate Fintown, recreate East Butte, recreate Centerville. Parts of Walkerville are gone. Recreate that part because you got Sanborn maps and you got all the, I'll show you the other tools that I used to do it. So anyway, what I have is in the book, I have a smaller version of each of those maps. So I was able to go with that and start putting people's names on it. And what I did is I was able to do it with Photoshop. And Photoshop's available here. And I had some computer skills, so that helped me out. I'm hoping that if somebody wants to do it for Fintown, you get 2 or 3 people together to work together, and somebody has one skill, somebody has another skill, and somebody has another skill, and combine it and create a lost neighborhood. Doing it with Photoshop, I was not an expert at it, but it wasn't that hard to just put the people's names on. Now, you have to pick a particular time period too. So I picked in the 1930s and 40s, because that's when my mother's story was. Because you'd have different, different people living in houses at different times. So that was my first step, doing that. I was lucky enough to have a story to start with. So let me back up again. If you're going to create a lost neighborhood, you're going to have to get some stories. And you've got to talk to people quick. Why do you have to talk to them quick? Okay, here's my friends. These are friends that I talked to that gave me great stories besides my mother's. It filled in. Jean Vittori, Marie Russell, Neil Scaffienza, Jim Matusi, Jim Rolando, Betty Hobby, Pete Zanke, Lucille Martinesso, Sheehan, Esther Fanconi, Norma Cassini, Angela and Birch Petroni, and Marlene Hochler. Okay, but you know some of these people, they're not with us anymore. And just shortly after I got the information from some of them, at least last time when I presented Katie's story, most of those guys were here, but there were a few of them already passed on. But they have a wealth of information and stories, and a lot of them are at some of our assisted living facilities, and you could get those stories from. So I'm just hoping that we can encourage some people to get the stories of Fintown. That's your starting point. You get some stories. Second is, you can get the Sanborn maps, fill in your neighborhood. Now, if you're not too sure about the addresses of these places, which the addresses are on the Sanborn maps, but also another thing is, who in the heck did live in a certain place? Well, here's the resources. You got the Sanborn map, you can get the map. Second part, if you wanted to find out, as an example, on Main Street, and this particular map right here, this one is Lincoln Avenue, but I'm just picking Main Street in Meaderville. It has everybody that lived there. This particular one is 1948. So all these books are all in 2 rooms over. They're the city directories. And so you can find out who lived at a particular place. And as an example, if I wanted to go down Main Street, and I'll just start in the 100 blocks. There's John Rolando, Louis Massey, Jim Delaranti, Joe Orlando, Bernard Hayes. It's got everybody's name, everybody's address. So you've got that to work with also to fill in the ones that you might not know. You might know who lived in certain ones, but what about the other one? So that's what I did. I filled in the people's names, and I also filled in the businesses, and that gave me a start of recreating this lost neighborhood. Now, you've got the stories, and you've got the maps. What does it look like? Well, let me just go back here a second and look at Katie's story. On Katie's story here, this is just, all I did here is I used Word to grab the information and just type it in. And as Jim said, there's a lot of words in this thing. 12,521. Some were big, some were small words. There's a lot of words. Jim was an English teacher, and he said that's every student's nightmare, that many words. Okay? Okay, so I started off, and I put a picture of Katie, and this is a picture of Katie and her sister Mary Buney, and that together. And then, actually, where Katie was born, I found out from Jim Matusi originally was a boarding house, and that boarding house was originally Art Cornell, some people might remember, had the Shoeatorium, and that was his family home, and we had some great information about that. Now I'm in the middle of deleting things and pasting things. Okay. I'm trying to get away from doing Photoshop, or not Photoshop, but
PowerPoint.
PowerPoint, thank you. I'm going to need a little help there, soften. Okay, let me just hit an escape.
There you go.
So I didn't want to try and get a PowerPoint presentation. I just want to show you what I did. Okay, and I typed it in, and this is a picture I found of my grandfather. Then we get into everybody else. Here's in Meaderville. We started off, and I just put some of the businesses, and this was the Justice Court. This is an old picture, and because of the stories I had, that was probably a picture of Jen Stevens. Jen Stevens lived up in North Meaderville, and I always wondered, it was kind of strange. My dad was the only Greek in Meaderville, and next to him, up in North Meaderville, was an Englishman. And the rest of us, we couldn't get away from the Italians. My mother was Italian, but you know. So I found that Joe Stevens was an Englishman, and then I go back to the old story is, originally the Cornish had settled in Meaderville, and then they left in a few Italians in, and all of a sudden the Cornish got run out. As Jim Nicolati told me one time when I started this book, and I didn't start it as a book. All I did is what I did is I typed up the stuff, and then I found the pictures, and I'll show you in a minute where to find the pictures. I found the pictures, and I put that together, and I said, Jim, take a look. This is what I'm going to get to my kids. And I'm not organized, but Jim is. He comes, he says, let me meet you at the archive. So he comes up, and Jim uses his 3-hole punch, puts it into a binder, and he says, look, Don, you got a book here. All you have to do is square out the facts. Well, that added 2 years of work because I had to get, a lot of these people had to verify things. One, a lot of you probably know Dolph Gooney. Now, most of you don't know what his nickname was as a kid. It wasn't Dolph. And I had to go and verify that with, I stopped over to see Pete Zanke. Oh, the good thing about doing this kind of research, you visit people like Pete. And you sit down and you have a couple of glasses of wine and you visit Pete. And so Pete gave me some wine and gave me all his stories. And he said, I'm not positive, but if you go and see Lucille Martinesso Sheehan, she'll know. So I go over to the Copper Ridge, and I asked for Lucille Martinesso, and the people said, she's not, I don't know anybody by that name. And then all of a sudden I forgot, Sheehan. So, so I'm walking down the hall, they told me where her room is, I see her walking down the hall, I said, Lucille, guess what? I just asked for Lucille Martinesso. She says, Donnie, nobody's called me that in 70 years. So, anyway, we sit down and I'm trying to verify, and I said, my mother said that Dolph's nickname as a kid was Farmer. Yes, we all called him Farmer. I don't know why he had that nickname for a while, but then it became Dolph. Anyway, you get these great stories, and we started doing, filling in some of the information of the stories about the fire hall. And this here is a picture from the Sanborn Map that I blew up. It's a little bit of history a lot of people didn't know. My mother kept telling me, Meaderville had its own motion picture place. It had its own stables. It had everything of the little town. Well, where was the motion picture place? Well, I had to go back and take a look. Here's the Italian mission. This is the blacksmith, and there's the motion picture right there at 80. What did that all become? Eventually, it became the second place of the Rocky Mountain Cafe. That's where the motion picture was. For a while, it was a stable. It was Hoff's stable, and so we had things in there that changed names several times. We even had a school in Meaderville that was on Main Street, on the second floor, one of the buildings on Main Street. And I have it listed there. So it was fun just discovering this stuff off of the Sanborn maps. Okay? So it's a wealth of information as far as discovering things. And continuing on, she talked about the high-heeled shoes, and there's Trollia's shoe store try it again, the high lace shoes. And we took his Grusso's grocery, and then we got some that we found Rocco's Farm. Now, that actually is a misnomer because I went and worked with James Madison up there, up at we have a new map of Meaderville. We found out that Rocco's was another one. I thought this clear picture we zoomed up was another one out there. We still haven't figured out whose farm was a little bit further out. So it wasn't Rocco's. Quick story about Rocco's farm. Some of you remember that?
She's a Rocco.
Okay. One of the things that Jim Matusi was telling me, you can't get after Jim now, but he said when he was a kid, they had some floods, and all the pigs and everything else come down. So they all had dinner that night with chickens and everything else. They all came down in Silverboat Creek, and they were all grabbing them. So that doesn't look like that. Doesn't look. I think that's a misnomer on that one. There was one further down the valley, which this one is. So I zoomed in the wrong one. I found there was a few things I made some mistakes on, and and if you find some more mistakes, let me know. And we got Sam's Club right here, and one of these is Serini. And then I got a picture, and I was able, after doing all this, to label these various buildings. Finding them. And the Spanish Village, my mother always told me about Spanish Village. Where in the heck was a Spanish Village? Well, then it became the Savoy later. And it was a Spanish Village originally because it had kind of a false front on it. And the old Rocky Mountain, that was the original one that burned down. Quick story about the Rocky Mountain, and I'll get off the Meaderville stories in a minute, but on the Rocky Mountain, when the original one was being burnt on fire, Fred's bar was next door. Jimmy Matusi was a little kid, and he got sent in to go get the guys out because they're in the back room playing cards. And the fire's going on, and they're not about to finish. Go outside and turn my hands on. Okay? And so we have listed, down here I've got listed the Golden Fan. The Golden Fan became what? Became Rocky Mountain. And if you ever look at the sign going across, I think it's across Meaderville for the Rocky Mountain, you can still see the Golden Fan in those pictures of the sign. And then you got some of them changed names so many times it was unreal. One of them, let's see, I was just trying to see which, there was one bar that went to about 4 different places. It'll come to me in a minute what it was. So as you're going through the city directory, you find out that some people move the bars around. You've heard about the 45 Club. Okay. Where was that? It was on the corner. But the address wasn't 45. I think it was originally someplace else. Then they moved it. Okay. Back to starting off the story, what she did is we started off and we decided to go, and this is the same picture that I think, about the same picture you find right around the corner. Beneto's candy store.
Oh, wow.
So she started off with telling me where they lived and a little bit about that. And another thing on the Sanborn Map, 1916 one, you don't find St. Helena's Church on it. It wasn't built at 20 and 21.
Don, before you go too far, I just read something about Katie Murray's dad on there.
Yep.
If you scroll up, I'm curious what that's.
He used to, he did let's see.
Because I remember them when they had a corner store down here.
Okay, let's see. Oh, here we go.
Oh, yeah.
Yep. Okay, we started off, we had 3 candy stores, Holman's in North Meaderville, Miss Spineto, and Fagan Drug Store. We had a fruit and vegetable man that came once a week. He was Mr. Murray, Katie Murray's dad. So they usually came like in the vegetable, either a truck or pulled by the horse. And then, here's a mystery person I've been trying to find for years, Maggio. There's a man, this is before Mazzolini was getting the grapes for people in Meaderville. There's a man named Maggio, and I went and talked to Verge and Ange Petroni, and they had ideas who Maggio might have been. And then I talked to Gene Vittori, that he also thought he might know. He said he remembered Maggio Swamping at the Arrow, I think it was. Anyway, Maggio used to get the grapes originally, and he's kind of a mystery person. A lot of people we have just by nicknames, and we're trying to figure out who they were. So we've never been able to pinpoint who Maggio was.
Where do you get the grapes from?
They'd order the grapes, and they would come in on a rain car, a train car, railroad car. I remember when I was a little kid, my uncles, I went with them, and we left and we went down to some place where the train was. I had no idea where it was. And they're getting boxes of grapes, and that was make the wine. So somebody was always in charge of ordering the grapes and getting the grapes, and everybody would go down and pick up the grapes, and away we go. Okay, back to St. Helens. I said it's not on the map because it wasn't until 1921 when it was built. Why in the world would you have Holy Savior and a couple blocks down the road, if you remember Meaderville, a few blocks down the road, about 3 blocks and about a block over, you have another Catholic church? Because the Italians did not want to go to church at Holy Savior. Why? Because the people in McQueen were going there. So were they Italian? No. Yeah, they're not going to do that. So they petitioned and they got their own church. Now, they had to go to Holy Savior School. You know, they didn't get a school out of it, but they did get their own church, so that's why the Italians all went to. I was kind of, I didn't dawn on me, boy, these were really close. There wasn't that big of a community to handle 2 churches, but anyway, that's why we have St. Helens.
Wow.
Oh, and these are the good haircuts. That's myself and that's my brother. Yeah. And so.
One of Lena's haircuts.
One of Lena's haircuts.
Trained barber, huh?
Well, actually, she did better than Dominic. He had the barber shop. At least I felt a lot more comfortable with her. Okay.
So she was a boy.
And there's an old picture of the Franklin School, and that's my cousin Betty Peterson in front of the Franklin School. It's a kind of a blurry picture, but that was we lucked out. So that's another thing, is finding these old pictures. And now, since I did this book, I started a thing on Facebook, and a lot of us contribute to that. And we changed it to Meaderville and McQueen Stories. And people find old pictures and stories, and they post it, and we've got a couple hundred people that view that. I'm hoping to do that for, again, Centerville, Midtown, other places to build your own story. And I'll go back again and kind of review all these things that we need to do, but I just wanted to show you how I went about doing it. Okay, again, you just find these pictures, and there's the diplomas that you would get. Okay, and I'm just coming down just a little bit further, and we'll start with okay, so she started. We can start down the north side of Leatherwood. Okay, so down the north side of Leatherwood, and she talks about the Isola family that lived at 69 Leatherwood. And she had a little story about Benettos and about the candy store, and she had a story about Skinders. Now, I don't know if you know the Skinders, but one of Brian Sedita is, okay, well, his grandmother was Skinder, and she was a survivor of the Titanic. So, and we had an article about her. They've had a couple articles. You find all these real interesting things. And I remember my mother telling me that, so we had to go back and research it and find that she was a survivor of the Titanic. And then next to Skinders and that, there were 2 little houses that were rented. Bear with me because I keep it in the wrong key. And then, see, I was going down, just going right down the street, and it's matching up with the houses I have here. And so we're just going straight by. Now, where in heck am I getting all these house pictures?
Yeah.
Isn't it nice to go down memory lane and find all these houses in Meaderville? I don't have a collection like that. The archives does. But you have to do a little research for it, okay? So on the archives, you can find where they lived, and you pick the years that you want. This is a 52, that was a 48, whatever you want, you can find it. Let me just, before I get into that, there's 3 parts to these usually. Before 1928, they didn't have a broken in 3 parts, so you can't index them by address. But here it's got them by name, so you can look people up by name. But if you're looking to find, I get in this pink section, I can find Main Street, Broadway, whatever, what's on the various streets in the pink section. And then you have another section back here, and you can find out the people by their phone numbers. You can look up the phone numbers. So they have all of that in these city directories. And as an example, I'm just going to go real quickly here to Broadway, and let's see. I just wanted to back up here 1 second here to Broadway, because somebody was asking about the bars over there in Fintown. Where were these various bars in Fintown? And so I was going through here and finding the different names of the bars that you can find right here in Fintown. I'm not going to spend time to look at it, but it didn't take but a couple minutes.
For small neighborhoods, they had a lot of bars.
Well, there's like 3 of them right together, and then the next block up there's another bar.
Yeah.
And then if you wanted, and I don't know, a lot of us are at the age where we remember Luigi's was on Park Street.
Yeah.
And there was a couple other streets up there behind Luigi's that I didn't even know existed, but they show it on this Sanborn, and then we find out people lived in those neighborhoods. Anyway, back to the pictures. I'm bouncing around a little bit, but if you want the pictures, here's an example. These are called orange cards. And we have the people in the archives and volunteers spend a couple years sorting these. Somebody went dumpster diving behind the, I don't know, it's the courthouse, that they threw out all these records.
Oh my God.
And somebody went dumpster diving and found all these old assessor records because they didn't need them anymore.
Wow.
And so after the dumpster diving, it took a long time to sort them out into the various streets and so forth. But as you look through here, I can find here, and I go Broadway Street on East Broadway, and I'll just pull out a couple here, and I'll get them back into the same order. I learned how to do that.
He's just saying
We'll
that
see if
because
I
I'm sitting here.
Better not go down me.
That's right.
And I've got some of the buildings on East Broadway here. There's an optical building not too far east on this particular one. But you'll have all these pictures. So here again, I got my trusty camera. This time I didn't have to stand up on top of it too much, but I got above it with my trusty camera, took a picture of the houses. Then I went and cropped the picture, and I had these pictures of all these particular houses, like in Meaderville. And you can do it on any of the places because we have this. It's all here at the archives. So you got the maps to work with. You need somebody that will put the names in with Photoshop. You've got the city directories to get all the names of people who were in those particular addresses during the time period that you choose. And you've got the pictures. As an example, there's more Broadway. And here, I'm just going to grab one that I had used before. Let's see if I can get that quickly. No wonder it's grabbing the wrong one. Bear with me, I'm getting slower every day.
We feel your pain.
Well, I dug one that didn't have it, but almost every one of these have the picture of the house, and it has the name of the people that have it. And then sometimes they say that they're gone. Well, let me flip over real quickly. I took a picture of a lot of them on Broadway already myself. And And so I have a whole bunch on a disc, and I took pictures, but you can crop it, and then you could, if you happen to recognize that particular house. But actually what I did is I took pictures, and then I also had their address on another picture. I just wanted to pull one up real quickly for you to see.
Is that the
So-
Broadway garage next door?
It could be. I'll flip back in a minute because I don't want to goof up the Katie story yet. I only do one thing at a time anymore. I used to do that thing called multitasking. I think that's what really, okay. And so, and then you find some of these things that a lot of people didn't know. There was a street called Ella in Meaderville. And this is the house of the Powers. And my dad's best friend, Joe and Jim Powers, lived on Ella. That's how my dad got into the Meaderville connection. He knew the Powers boys. And then the Powers boys, well actually, long story, my dad lost his mother child at 4 days old, and then his father died when he was 15. So, but he was lucky because his father had a restaurant, and he learned to work in the restaurants. So he always had a job in the restaurants at the age of 15. And he finally was a busboy over at the Finland Hotel. And he was at the busway, and one day one of the waitresses kicked the door open. I don't know if you remember the coffee shop. They'd have the two doors, and they kick the door open, they'd go into the back, because they'd be bringing in trays. And that was my mother, and he fell in love right there. So, anyway, his friend Power says, "You don't have a chance with that." And actually, my mother had her mother really working on her because she says, "Why do you want to marry a Greek? You can have a nice Italian boy." A lot of pressure in those days. So, anyway, you have all kinds of things that you find out that you probably didn't even know. You might think you know Fintown. You might think you know Centerville. There's all kinds of places back here that you discover. I ended up leaving Meaderville early. It was 1952 because my dad got a job on the police department. And we had to move into the city, and Meaderville's in the county. But we kept going back there, because we had relatives going back there. But there's a lot of things that I would have remembered if I stayed there a little bit longer. But things like Ella Street and a lot of things, other parts of Meaderville, I only discovered by going through this. And I found out people lived there all their life, and they still didn't know certain parts. And there's the Gorsuous place, and you got the stories about all these people. Now that's where it's going to be hard. You got to find people with the stories. So I don't know if anybody wants to take on the challenge of trying to get somebody to do some of the others or improve on what I did. But you have all the materials here at the archives to do that. Now, questions and yeah.
Excuse me, really quick. You were talking about the dumpster diving and the pictures. I have a whole bunch of those that I got on your Sanborn Map.
Mm-hmm.
You know where that came from?
That was a dumpster dive too, wasn't it?
My husband and his friend saw they wanted to have power, throw it in the garbage.
Oh my goodness.
And they went and took it out.
Wow.
Oh, yeah.
Now, one of the reasons I use this Sanborn map, you can get the Sanborn maps online, and the archives has the name and the password to get into it, because there's a deal in Montana that we can use them free and online, any of the Sanborn maps. And you get the Sanborn map of Butte, like, I think there's one like about 1881, one like 1888, one like 1907, 1914, this 1916 one. You can get them online. But then you try to enlarge them and work with them. It's not that easy. And besides, this one right here is colored, and I believe, don't quote me because you do the book and you get thrown in jail. I didn't say it, but I believe you have the right that you don't have to worry about it because it's way past on.
And did you
Actually-
say what site that is?
Actually, Don, the early ones up to 1900 are now available at the Library of Congress.
Oh, they are? Okay.
You have 1884, 88, 90, and 1900, and they're in color. You can download them in different sizes of PDFs, JPEGs, and TIFFs. They're so easy to use. They're wonderful. And of course, it's free. It's Library of Congress, but archived just like us.
Yeah, just look at the Sanborn maps.
And is that where you got yours?
No, we got ours from
I
here.
got this one right here.
And then I
Yeah.
have one other question.
Mhm.
And did you just paste those, or cut and paste those into Word, the pictures?
Yeah, all I did is, yeah, I just inserted it with Word. And I'll tell you, it was moving it back and forth, and every so often my page would go haywire.
Yeah.
So it took me a while. So, I was kind of average at Photoshop, average at Word, and, average at the cropping and so forth. But if you found, don't have one person do it all. Have one person, they can handle the Photoshop. And see, once you get to Photoshop, it's going to be too big of a file to do anything with, so you got to, basically, this is a reduced one, turn it into JPEG. And I took everything down to Instaprints. And I wanted to get it large enough so I could show people. So they did this here, and then I just had them put it on backing on this here. I didn't laminate or anything, just wanted it for showing. But then they also reduced it down. But you have to get somebody that can do each of those things. And so the components are basically get a story, start gathering stories. Okay, gathering stories. You can get your maps, and you can start and get somebody to start working on the maps. And how do they work on the maps? Take a picture of the map first of all, use Photoshop, but also you've got your city directories. Your city directories will help you fill in the names of each of the ones on the maps. And then after you do that, you want pictures, come over here and go through this here. Now, that's a lot of hours. Cheryl Ackerman and I went up, and we were doing the Broadway ones, because she had an interest in checking out Broadway. So I have a bunch of the pictures, and I think I can probably get it on disc and get it to archives. I might have already given them what the pictures that I've taken. Or maybe we can get somebody to take it on as a project and go through the East Broadway to take care of Fintown. Go up there and take care of the ones up in Wells Street, whatever, to take care of, to do Centerville. So I'm just hoping that somebody else will take on what I took on and create some other neighborhoods. Yes?
Who owned that? Was it Teddy Parish who owned the Rocky Mountain?
Teddy Parish.
And then who owned the Arrow?
My cousin,
Yeah.
the Gross.
The Grosso.
The Grosso.
Gross.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Is that Tony and her? Same family, yeah.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Oh, we got here. We'll go down through. Then we got it on here. The fun part is when I get down to a lot of you. Oh, look at this one. That's meeting the answer for Tony on a goat. You're getting pulled by a goat. I got this down at Guido's Bar. Picture. Actually, a few pictures of the Meaderville ones came out at Guido's Bar for here. I'll just pass. I'm just going to go real quick. This is all Lincoln Avenue. I had questions about Lincoln Avenue, and that's where I got Marie Russell. She remembered everything about Lincoln Avenue, who lived there. Oh, another story.
There's Auntie Mabel's.
Go ahead. Go ahead. Tell me.
It's cute. The White House is my Auntie Mabel's, and the little cabin,
Okay.
nobody knows the story on that.
Oh, that little tiny one on the left.
It's at the mining museum right now with nothing written on it or anything.
Oh.
But a little guy named George Jelsey went by Vincent was his
Vince
name.
Jelsey.
And we used to go over to and knock on his door, he'd always give us gum. He passed away, I think it was in 1965, but that log cabin that was in Antioch. My dad's sister.
Yeah.
How old was he?
This is what she had on there. The home.
Oh, yeah, it says.
Home first belonged to Armando Slim and Mabel Pelagi, and then they had one daughter, Hazel. And then they rented a small cabin to Vince Jelsey, and that was at the very end of, no, I guess that one wasn't, that was right in the middle of Lincoln. There's a whole bunch of Lincoln
There
there.
was a lot more down south of it.
Wow.
Did the Murrays live out there, John?
What's that?
Did Mr. Murray and his wagon live out there?
No, he came in there. People came in, like Mr. Murray came in, then they had people coming in from Elk Park, bringing, there was two dairies in Elk Park bringing in. And so you have, I don't know, do any of you remember seeing the vegetable guy or the fruit guy with the trucks? We have them even in the Longfellow area. You hear this coming down and they come down the street. Mhm.
Not the vegetable guy, but an earlier question, where did the grapes come from? They were still coming in on trains in 1978, and my neighbor, who was from MIT and had made blueberry wine back there, decided that he wanted to try out this Butte thing and said, "Do you want to make wine with me?" And there was an Italian lady who used to live in Meaderville, who still brought in a trainload. They always came from Lodi, California, which is now considered the best, and in those days, it came from Lodi because they were cheap and it was hot. But Bill George, for many years, sent his own truck down to Lodi rather than bringing them in on a train in later years. And I think that Butte Produce still does for those of you that want to make up a batch in your basement.
Okay, I just wanted to get to the Main Street part, just about got it right here. So it's kind of a trip down memory lane for a lot of people when you get onto Main Street, because a lot of people remember Meaderville and Main Street. And there was a Pioneer Club. Now Pioneer ended up, I'm gonna figure out, let's see. Okay. It was originally Grosses Mercantile, right there where the Pioneer is. And then at various owners, it was also the Grove, and it's also known as Cappers, and the Pioneer, and the Brass Rail. Okay, that's what I was trying to remember. Brass Rail was 4 different locations in Meaderville. There's 2 locations on one side, then it was on the corner, I think, of the other corner of the block when the Meaderville Merc burned. And then it moved, there. So there's 4 locations for the Brass Rail. So you try and say, okay, where is the Brass Rail? Oh, another story. Art Cody. Art told me, he said, got my first job down there. So I wasn't even 21. He was like 17, and he was bartending down at the Copper Club. Because I had to ask him. There was my mother had a picture of her and Ann Cody skating. I didn't know if that was a sister or a different one. Now here's a picture inside the Meaderville Merc, and I had all the names labeled on here, and Pete Zanke is inside of here. And they have all the turkeys lined up there. So Rocky Mountain Cafe, yep, and this is basically what I did. Now, you can spend time and you can kind of go back through kind of memory and you can make some corrections. And the last time I did this, I didn't do North Meaderville in this book. And reason is, my mother lived there just a short time. She didn't tell me many stories about North Meaderville. But I did put the map of North Meaderville and put everybody's name on the map of North Meaderville in the book. So that was kind of a missing one. And there's a whole bunch of stories that could come out about that and be added there. I don't have any plans for any more books myself. I just want to show somebody else how to do it. And you might want to just do it on the internet. Right now, I just keep a page up. It's called Meaderville and McQueen Stories. And people keep adding to it. Pauline's added to it. A lot of people, you find an old picture. Fab, I'm trying to think of his first name. Is it Don Fab? He's down in California. He's got some old pictures or adds some old memories in that. And I think he's in his 90s. And so, you know, you can do this in other neighborhoods. What's that? Oh, one of the things I found on here was really neat. In 1893, there was it came out from the Chamber of Commerce, and they had the 10 most populous places in Montana. Butte, of course, was number 1 with 33,000, I think it was. And this is 1893. That was just in the city limits of Butte. Okay, and they had Bozeman on there, and they had Missoula on there, and number 8. Let's see. Yeah, about number 8 was Walkerville, and number 10 was Meaderville. And at that time, Meaderville had, I think, around, Walkerville had about 1,800 people, Meaderville had about 1,500 people. And they were the most populous like in 1893.
Wow,
So,
that's amazing.
yeah.
Was Meaderville built on a hill like Walkerville? What was the terrain like? Was it flat?
It was kind of sloping.
Sloping?
Just kind of sloping. A couple neat things about it. When you went from, if you wanted to drive to Helena until, oh, I don't know when it was, probably sometime in the 40s, you didn't go straight up that Woodville Hill. You went through, right through the middle of Meaderville, and you went all the way around. It was the old Meaderville, it was the old
Wow.
Helena Highway, so it went along the side of Meaderville and up the hill. So there was no way of bypassing the Rocky Mountain Cave. No. And if you go back and you get those old Sanborn maps, like the 18, I think the very first one was it 1884?
I think it's 84 is the
Okay,
first.
it's got the streets in Meaderville. One street is Boston, another street down there is Smelter, and they have a place down there, it's called the China Row. That's about where Lincoln Avenue is. And until 1939, it wasn't a lot of, remember Leatherwood, you started at Leatherwood and you go all the way down, it's all Leatherwood. No, from Main Street down to the bridge by, right behind Greedy's grocery store, was Smelter. And then from there, up until about the, it might have been a little further, by Franklin School, was Atlantic. Where did those streets come from?
Yeah.
Well, Atlantic, there was Atlantic mine up there.
Oh.
Smelter, right down there, right down by the creek, they had open smelters. So originally. So a lot of things have changed. So if you go and take a look at some of those older ones in the 30s, and you're trying to find something on Noble or some of the other streets in that, you might not find it by that name. You have to know the other names. But in Sanborn, it's got those names.
Well, that's
So that's that.
And
I hope that was helpful for giving you ideas of what to do. I'll answer questions, but basically, I'd really love to have somebody see if they can encourage people to either go on with what I did, or let's create those other neighborhoods. I mean, there's still enough people out there, and enough stories out there, and you've got everything at the archive to do it. To create a neighborhood. Thank you.